Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Charbonneau with SpinSheet Magazine, and over to my side is Molly Winans, the editor of SpinSheet Magazine. Hi, Molly.
Hey, Sharb. Hi, everybody. Welcome to SpinSheet Happy Hour.
Another one. It's February. Holy cow.
Well, it is not only February, but it is one rainy February day, an awesome day to stay home, have a cocktail, and watch a show on the internet.
That's right. And watch SpinSheet
It's
Happy Hour.
actually our perfect weather day. You know how there's like a perfect day for the start of a sailboat race? This is not it.
No,
But this
not at all.
is the perfect start to the SpinSheet Happy Hour. And I really like the little film thing you got going at the beginning there. You know, you're always pulling out little surprises.
I stole that from Zach. He did it yesterday with Live with Lenny. Another live broadcast.
That is Zach Dittmars, our production manager, who makes us look good in every issue of SpinSheet. So
That's right.
yeah.
So, yeah. I was going to post up there, you don't have anything better to do tonight. So watch SpinSheet Happy Hour. But I think this was awesome. I'm excited about this. I think we've had a couple of these guests on before. We've talked about, offshore racing before, but we're going to talk specifically about the A to B, which is
Well, I know that. Well, first of all, we've been sponsoring the Annapolis Bermuda Ocean Race, which I believe now is the Mustang Annapolis Bermuda Ocean Race. We've been sponsoring this race, as long as I can remember. Certainly, as long as I've been around. So I'm excited to have our guests on and talk about ocean racing. And Sharby, you've done this race.
I did. My wife and I, my father-in-law, and a bunch of friends. We did it in 2012.
Yeah.
It was one of the.
I can't believe it was that long. That's 10 years ago. That's
I know, right?
Yeah, I still remember taking pictures of you guys at the start and being all excited. And
it was fantastic. We had a great sail across. I'm not going to talk about the way back. I didn't have to do the way back.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
They had some weather on the way back.
There was a little weather.
Yeah.
I wasn't there though.
Yeah. So are you going to stay on tonight and talk about the race? Or are you going to go back behind the scenes or?
That's a great question.
Mm-hmm.
I might pipe in. How about that?
Okay. Yeah.
I'll tell you what. I'll stay on until I'm not.
Yeah. Well, when we asked everybody a little bit about their sailing experience and their experience with the A to B, right at the very beginning, you can explain, tell us in brief your bit of the race. And then you can go back behind the scenes, and I guess you just show up whenever you feel like it. That's
how I roll.
That's how you roll. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, anyway, I'm excited. The folks from Annapolis to Bermuda have been, it's been a little bit in getting ready for this happy hour. They've been a little late to the start. But they're in the green room now.
And everybody showed up within 5 minutes of us going live.
And we trust. We trust that they have some awesome things to say to our audience. So for anyone out there in the audience, we are going to talk about ocean racing, this particular ocean race in particular. If you just take a second, share this to your Facebook page, let people know you're on, you're watching. It's something fun. Here we go.
All right.
Well, would you like to thank our sponsors before?
I was just going to say, I just want to thank Mount Macay Rum for sponsoring this episode of SpinSheet Happy Hour. Yep. There's your jacket, my hat. So, so let's bring our guests on.
All right, great. Hi, Don. Guys. You made it. We have Don Snell, the safety officer for the Annapolis Bermuda Race. We have Corinne Smith, who is the chair for this year's race, and Mike Lemkolo. And Mike, I think you're media guy.
Well, right now I'm the media guy. I used to be the safety guy. I used to be the chair. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they essentially can't get rid of you.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we like to start at the beginning, and this time we're going to start with Sharb. So why don't you tell us a little about your sailing background, Sharb, and how you got into the Annapolis Bermuda Race.
So I didn't really get into offshore sailing until my late 20s. and I caught the bug. It's one of the worst trips I've ever taken, but I loved it. Caught the bug, and I went on to actually get my yacht masters, and then I got my captains just recently. But I did in 2012. My wife and I on my father-in-law's boat went off and decided to do the race, and it not only was on our bucket list, but my father-in-law's as well. And we took a couple of friends. And we had a total crew of 8 on the way out there, and it was absolutely a blast. The race organizers were fantastic, and it was a great sail, and just a great atmosphere, from the start to the finish.
Now, I asked my questions in a little bit reverse order than usual. I forgot to ask, what are you drinking?
Oh yeah, I'm drinking, not game ginger.
Okay. Good. And I have a little Mount Gay and punch. I have a little summery rum punch happening. So, how about you? Corinne? What are you drinking?
Oh, I'm a really boring person. I'm drinking water. I'm trying to be good, trying to get myself in shape for the A to B race in a few months.
Okay, good. Hydrating.
Enough of this COVID stuff. I need to get back in shape. So yes, I'm hydrating.
Yeah. And how about you guys? What are you drinking, Don? Did you have time to get yourself a drink? I knew you were in the car.
Pre-made. It's a glass of sherry.
Okay.
Nice.
And Mike, what are you drinking there from?
I'm drinking
Milwaukee?
Eastport. I'm drinking Eastport Yacht Club's signature drink, the Skinny Bitch, which is basically vodka soda with a splash of cranberry. But I'm actually talking to you from South Milwaukee Yacht Club in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Yeah. So if we thought the weather was bad.
Yes. Yeah, because I currently go north. It's about 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Are you getting ice and snow, Mike?
Yeah, it's snowing right now. I'll show a picture of the lake not too long. It's snowing pretty good, but that's all right.
All right, cool. So Corinne, let's talk a little bit. You'll give us just a little bit of background on how you got into sailing, and then more specifically, how you got into the Annapolis Bermuda Race.
Well, I got into sailing, about 15 years ago. And then the race was Mike's fault because he was doing the race, and we had a mutual friend who talked him into doing the race, and we ended up all going and doing the 2010 race, which was amazing. I did not have much offshore experience, and I had no offshore experience, but I agreed to be the nurse and the cook. And they said, okay. So I tagged along, and I did the race and then the return, and then I was hooked, and that was it. And then I did the race. I did the trip across 4 more times. So I've done the race a few times, and I've done the return almost every year. I do the return. So yeah, I'm doing the race this year, but I will be returning.
And how long have you been on the committee?
I think after that 2010 race, probably 2011 was when they got me on the committee, and I did entries for the races in 2012, 14, 16, 18, 20, and now I'm doing the chair position. So,
okay. Well, good.
Yeah, it's a great volunteer opportunity, and you don't have to be a member of Eastport Yacht Club to volunteer for the committee. Anyone can be on the Annapolis to Bermuda committee, and we are a completely volunteer-run race, which kind of makes it different than a lot of other races out there.
Yeah, this is true. How about you, Don? Will you tell us a little bit about? I know you've been on the program before, but let's assume we have some new listeners, and tell us a little bit about how you got into sailing, and then more specifically, how you got into the Annapolis Bermuda Race.
Sure. I was a sailor as a kid, and then I got into the Air Force, and for 25 years, I just flew jets around the world and really got very little chance to go sailing. But once I retired about 20 years ago, the bug was there. And so I started doing a lot of day racing, some overnight racing. And when I moved down here with my wife about 10 years ago, I knew that I wanted to get into offshore. I didn't know much about it, but I did the Bermuda race in 2012 for the first time as a tactician. And then from then on, we bought our own 39-foot Daler called Himmel, and we raced that in 14 and 16. And then we took 2018 off to sail the boat over to Europe. So we didn't do the race in 2018, and of course nobody did in 2020.
Exactly.
And so this is my first time on the committee for A to B. And just like probably 3/4 of the people on the committee, I also was recruited by Mike Lemkool. You know,
Yeah. You gotta beware of the drinks at the Eastport Yacht Club. They have heavy pours over there, and Mike's the convincing guy.
Mike has a reputation for conniving people and getting them into activities that he's supports and espouses.
Well,
So
Don, I have to remind anyone, any astute SpinSheet readers out there listening, remember the wonderful series of articles you wrote about your transatlantic trip on Himmel and then your subsequent adventures over there in the Mediterranean. I keep hoping that you and your crew will go off on some more adventures so we could have more of your great writing in the magazine. So,
well, it may still happen. We'll see.
Okay, good. And last but not least, we have Mike Lemkool, who seems to have held every position on the committee of Annapolis Bermuda Race. So, Mike, why don't you start at the beginning? Tell us a little bit how you got into sailing, and then how you got into this race.
So I actually got started sailing in Lake Michigan as a kid, and wasn't until I moved to DC and noticed there was this thing called the Chesapeake Bay that I started getting into sailing on the Chesapeake in early or late 90s. But by 2004, I think, I did my first Bermuda trip, and that was really my first offshore experience. And that's when I realized, oh, I remember that feeling, the feeling of seasickness. That trip that we took to Bermuda on Beth Berry's boat is the offshore experience that I measure all offshore experiences against. We had gale pretty much the entire way, 35 knots or more. We survived, we made it, and the next year I ended up doing a transatlantic, and having a short-term memory is really good when you're a sailor. You only remember the good things about a lot of your voyages. Anyway, I did my first Bermuda trip on my own boat in 2010. And then I've crewed in 12, 16, and 18. 14 was the only year I didn't do it on the last decade. And then, and I was safety guy for a long time. And I was chair for the ill-fated 2020 race where we didn't go anywhere. But looking forward to going in 2022. That's about it.
Well, it sounds to me like since you were the chair during the ill-fated year, that maybe you need to be the chair again to have a sense of accomplishment. Come the next
well,
Anyway, that's my vote.
One never knows.
Next time. How about that, Corinne?
I'm not. Yes, I think
you
Mike
never know.
Have an opportunity in the future to be the chair again. Absolutely. But
So,
we've been very cooperative as far as making a lot of the decisions for this race, because so much was done in 2020. It made a lot of, for this race, very easy, because a lot of those decisions were already made and things were already in place. So Mike has been instrumental in making my first race really much easier than it probably would have been.
Well, Corinne has done a heck of a job. The thing Corinne really brings to this is she gets to know all the skippers. And the thing about this race is we kind of pay attention to the skippers. We're not as big as the other Bermuda race, so we can. But Corinne actually gets to know all of them and makes it easier for everybody to do the race, which it's why we're so successful, I think.
So for anyone who's just tuning in, we're talking to the committee here from the Annapolis Bermuda Ocean Race. And Corinne, for anyone who's sort of uninitiated and unfamiliar with this race, can you give us a little history of this race?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. Mike, could you take this question, please? The history of the race. I think you have all the facts and figures in your head.
As I recall, it started in 1979.
I think so, yeah.
And so we used to go from Eastport Yacht Club to the what was it? The St. George's Dinghy Club in St. George's, Bermuda. And for many years that was the case. Now we were limited to, we had 50 boats that first year, and then they liked it so much they did it again in 1980. That's where they limited it to 50 boats, because I think that's all St. George's could handle at the time. But that's when they also decided to do it every other year. And so that's how we ended up on the even years, opposite the same year as the other Bermuda race. Of course, there's another Bermuda race in the odd years. But when you're racing out of Annapolis, you know, the odd years, Annapolis to Newport happens. So we decided we'd stay in the even years. But it's been running that way until, I don't know, what year did we move to Royal Hamilton Amateur Dinghy Club?
Yeah, we went to Royal Hamilton Dinghy Club in 2016. It was our first race there, and that really, the Braddock Royal Hamilton Amateur Dinghy Club, they also host the Marion to Bermuda race, which runs in the opposite years. So they're used to, you know, hosting a lot of boats. So they've really said, hey, as long as, you know, bring more boats if you want to bring more boats. But it's been really nice to move over there because it's right in Hamilton. You know, you've got pretty much everything right there, and it's in the middle of the island. So, you know, if you want to go to Dockyard or if you want to go over to St. George, you're kind of in the middle of everything. It's halfway between everything. And the club in Bermuda is just awesome. We oftentimes say it's so much like EYC, but in Bermuda. Like it just has the same sort of, when you get there, people are really friendly. And I remember visiting Bermuda before the race, before the first time we were going to go there, and just stopping by just to say, hey, we're going to be having our race next year here. And they like invited me in. They're like, come to the bar. They're buying me drinks. I was like, this is a great club. So our big philosophy with this race is that we want to be really inclusive and reach out to all different kinds of boats, cruisers, racers, you know, multi-hulls, people who like to do double-handed racing. I've got a Celestial class now. So we're a little bit of everything. So if there's something you like to do, our race probably is the place to go. But we try to give you an experience from the time you sign up until, you know, you pretty much until you finish the race. And even afterwards, you know, you're part of this whole experience. It's not just showing up and doing a race. Lots of opportunities for education before you do the race, and awesome parties afterwards.
So has anyone in this crowd ever done the Newport to Bermuda race?
I haven't.
I have not.
Okay. I was just wondering sort of how does your race different from that race? I know it's much older and I know it's a considerably larger race, but, you know, sort of an attitude and a vibe, do you think, or what you heard, how is it different from that race?
Well, they're a professionally run race. They actually hire a company that runs their race, and we're a volunteer run organization. If you send an email to the entries chair at the other race, they may or may not know who you are. I know who you are. I know what kind of boat you've got. I know where you keep it. I probably know a few of the people on your crew. And if you need crew, I'm going to be at the next happy hour and I'm going to talk to you about that. So we try to give you a really personalized, experience where you're going to make new friends. You're going to learn a lot about sailing. So even if you're somebody who doesn't consider yourself an expert in sailing, you know, you can have a conversation with Don or Mike at the next event and ask those kind of questions. So that's
from another perspective. I would say, well, we're cheaper.
Yeah,
because we can.
We're less expensive, Mike.
You're not less expensive, yeah.
Less expensive, yes, yes. Okay, we're not cheap, but That
Nothing
said,
in sailing
we,
is cheap,
we,
Mike.
we like to call it the longer and harder. We're longer and harder.
Yeah.
You've got to get down the bay, and I mean it's an added 125 miles to the race, and
So in total, it's what, 750 miles?
It is
yeah, something like that.
753 miles.
Right,
And it's one of the longest ocean races on the east coast of the U.S.
Yeah, I think there's one or two others. There is another A to B race, the Antigua to Bermuda race, that's longer. I guess that doesn't come from the East Coast, but it's hard to get down it's challenging to get down the bay and to get out. But frankly, the race to Bermuda then from the bay is maybe a little bit easier. Now, this isn't always the case, but you have a little better angle to Bermuda, where it tends to be a broad reach, or at least a beam reach.
It's like two races in one.
Right. So, and you're not fighting the Gulf Stream the whole time. I mean, Gulf Stream definitely plays a big factor in this race, but you're usually bisecting it and you're not running against it. So you can have maybe a little bit easier run headed to Bermuda as opposed to coming at it from the north like you would from the other race. Okay. And in some regards, because we're a smaller race, logistically, it's a little easier to deal with stuff here in Annapolis before you head to Bermuda.
Yeah. So, so far, I'm asking all the questions here. I just want to tell our audience out there, if you have any questions for the committee here for the Annapolis Bermuda race, feel free to put them in the comments. I see that Amy Harris has already asked one. When's the 2022 race? Oh, we forgot to mention that. When does the 2022 race start, Corinne?
June 3rd.
June 3rd, and it's not too late to sign up, and we'll get to that further. So the June 3rd race begins. So we're talking to the crew from Annapolis, Bermuda. Please post your question in the comments. And I have a question for Don, who's the safety officer. So and for anyone it seems to me there are a couple of people on this call who have not done an ocean race before. When it comes to safety equipment, what must sailors equip their boats with? You guys have a list of things.
Yes, we do. In fact, it's posted on our website. It's called our Safety and Equipment Regulations. And there's a number of things that are on there. As you say, they're mostly for safety items. There are items that are generally recommended by the U.S. Sailing Association that we've incorporated into our list. And the list is, in most cases, common sense kind of items. Most of which, you may have already on your boat. Some of which you will likely not. And the purpose of our race is to ensure that we look at your boat, because we will do a personal inspection of the boat. And if there's any deficiencies, we're going to help you figure out how to resolve that and get yourself into the race with the comfort and the confidence that, your boat is safely going to be able to do the race. We're not there to, eliminate people. We're there to help you, pass the inspection. Our inspections normally start in April and will go through early May or so for most of the boats. And that gives the skippers adequate time. If there's something they still need to add to the boat or something that needs to be fixed, then they can get that done before the beginning of the race on the 3rd of June. We have a number of volunteer inspectors, and we'll come to where your boat is in most cases, to do the inspection. If it's far away, like you're down in Florida and the boat's going to come up just before the race, well, then we'll work something out, with you once you arrive in Annapolis.
Mm-hmm. So so I've never done an ocean race myself, but I've interviewed lots and lots of people over the years who've done ocean races. So, I can think of a couple of things that you might not have equipped on your boat for, basic races down the bay, such as the Governor's Cup or the Down the Bay race or something like that.
Yeah.
How about something like an EPIRB or a PLB, a personal locator beacon, that sort of thing? Can people rent those, or do they have to purchase them?
They can do either one. PLBs I'm not sure about personal locator beacons. I think you could rent those as well. Certainly EPIRBs you can. A lot of people won't have a life raft, that they carry around. I would say the majority of the boats will rent, a 6-man or an 8-man life raft, whatever they need for their crew. So some of the more expensive items you can certainly rent, and you want to confirm that reservation beforehand. I wouldn't wait till May and say, "Hey, I need a life raft. Let's see what's available," because that could be tight. But many of the other items you're going to want to probably have for yourself, and you're not going to rent that. For example, a personal flotation device that has a harness along with a tether, that you can secure to the boat. Those are the kind of personal items that you're likely going to want to buy, and just keep it as your own custom item, particularly if this is just one out of many races you're doing. It's a good investment that will last you for years. And it's good not just for offshore races, but it's good for, as you say, an overnight race down the Gulf Cup, or even a day race on the bay where the winds are up and the waves are big. It's nice to have that kind of equipment on board the boat.
Some of the other things too are things like storm sails that you wouldn't normally have on the boat. One of the other things that we require is a secondary manual bilge pump that is mounted below. That drives a lot of people nuts, but it is a requirement that we do enforce. Most people have the manual bilge pump accessible in the cockpit. We require a second one down below. Trying to think of some of the other ones that are kind of sticker. Another one is that you have to have a way to operate your boat in case you lose your rudder, because it's not inconceivable that you hit something, a whale or something like that, you lose your rudder. How are you going to sail that boat? How are you going to keep that boat on course to Bermuda instead of just sitting there and setting off the EPIRB or calling for help? You've got to be self-sufficient.
That was a particular item I remember that we had difficult getting, but we did. We got sort of a handmade or fabricated tiller there, so it worked.
We are having a safety and I guess it's weather and navigation.
Yeah, right.
On the 12th, and that's open to whoever wants to attend. It's open to the public. It's free, and if you wanted to register for it, you could just go to our BermudaOceanRace.com website. We can talk about weather navigation. Probably a lot of these safety, storm sails, these sort of things are going to come up as part of the conversation.
Well, before
I would say too, just if you're really interested in offshore sailing, there is a safety at sea seminar that they have. I believe it's April 1st, maybe that weekend, at the Naval Academy. You definitely want to sign up for that, at least for the first day for the seminars. I highly recommend the second day when you're in the pool, where you actually have to figure out how to get in a life raft in the water with your PFD fully inflated. You haven't lived until you've tried to actually do it.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Anyone who is interested in learning more about safety to sea or registering, you go to mtam.org and then look under their events. There's a safety at sea drop down there, and the information and the registration link is there. Before we start, we've gotten a number of questions from the audience. Before we start with their questions, Corinne, you mentioned your seminar series. Let's sort of step back a little bit from that, because one of my questions was, how do you welcome and train newcomers for this race? Okay. And you have a fairly extensive seminar series.
We do.
So let's just talk about that more generally, and then also the ones that are coming up soon, and whether people
it is grown. Yeah, it's really, really grown, our seminar schedule. A couple of races ago, we had one seminar in the fall and one seminar in the spring. And now we're having, really 2, sometimes 3 events a month. So our upcoming when someone wants to do the race, and let's say they're relatively new and they really don't have any ocean race experience, we do encourage people to come to the different events we've got and talk to people and introduce yourself to me and tell me what you were looking for, and I'll introduce you to other people. It's really going to be about making those relationships. We have a crew board, and we have boats looking for crew and crew looking for boats. Putting your name on the crew board is a good thing to do. You may say, oh, well, there's so many people on that crew board. I'll never, I'm 15 people in. I'm never going to get a boat. And that's not true, because the different skippers are looking for different things. And so they may see you on the crew board and they may say, oh, this person looks like a good fit for my particular I had someone put his name on the crew board just 2 weeks ago, and he's now going to be racing with Joel Aronson on his boat. So it's just a matter of the right fit. So that's the first step, is to get on the crew board. And if you are a boat looking for crew, absolutely go on their boat looking for crew. Come to the seminars, ask a lot of questions. And it may be that if you don't have the ocean racing experience, you can't get that spot on a race boat. Maybe you do the return. That gives you the ocean miles experience. There are sometimes, I would hate to be on a race boat if I didn't know what I was doing, and hate the experience and have a horrible time. So if you fly to Bermuda, you can still participate in a lot of the activities we've got there, and then you just hop on a boat and come home.
Great. So we have some questions from the audience.
Sure.
Sharp, do you want to pop a couple of those up? We can.
I thought this was a good one.
Yeah, their COVID protocol. Hi, Ron. Ron Shazinski has popped by the program again and always asks good questions. And we appreciate it, Ron. Thank you.
I will take this one. I am prepared for this question. So is there COVID protocol? We did add we actually have in our notice of race, we have a COVID requirement that all of the participants in the race must be fully vaccinated and boosted. And we followed basically the lead of Bermuda. We are guests at the Royal Hamilton Amateur Dinghy Club. They've invited us to come to sail to their club. And so for Bermuda Customs, we are listed as the guests of RADIC. Bermuda is very strict. If you come to the island, they want to know how long you're going to be there and where you're staying and when you're leaving. So with this race, RADIC came to us and said, this is what Bermuda requires, this is what we're requiring. So at this point, we are requiring everyone to be boosted and immunized, their vaccinations and their booster shot to participate in the race. There may be additional testing before and after the race. That's going to really depend on Bermuda and where they are in June. But if you're planning to do the race, you need to get vaccinated and make sure that you're 100% up to date and current on the COVID vaccination booster. Because if you show up in Bermuda and you don't have that, they're going to escort you to a hotel of their choosing, which is going to be expensive, and you're going to need to they're going to make you stay there for up to 14 days.
Ooh,
so
okay.
That is going to be a very expensive and boring vacation. So that's our COVID protocol at this moment. We're waiting.
I was going to say, did you vote Mike off the island, or did he just disappear on it? Well, good. Anything else to add on the COVID protocol?
No.
We are so fortunate on our committee. We have a physician assistant, Michael Ann Ashford, on our committee, and she's on Don's safety committee, but she's really been working as our sort of medical person to help us stay on top of what is currently required and finding ways that we can help the skippers and the crew meet all the requirements and travel to Bermuda safely. So we're very fortunate we have someone who's really just focused on what are we going to do about COVID.
Great.
The only other thing I would add is this thing changes all the time.
It does.
So, what the requirements are now might be different, might be a lot less, might be a lot more. You just have to follow along.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all getting a little bit used to rolling with the punches in this world, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything is subject to change. So how many days does the race take to finish? Thanks for the question. Anyone want to answer that?
Depends on how fast your boat is. So the current record is 2 days, 18 hours?
Yeah, they did it.
Held by Bo Jest in 2010. I believe that year they got to Bermuda by the time I was just leaving the bay. That year, They got to Bermuda. They ordered 10 pizzas, and off they went to Newport, and they were actually able to do the Newport to Bermuda race that same year.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Yes.
you have to be on a rocket ship to achieve that.
But this year you could do the same thing. There's enough room. I think we're 3 weeks apart. You could easily do both races.
Yeah.
And frankly, if somebody wanted to, I'd probably personally give them the trophy for doing both.
Yeah.
But
well,
you know,
over the years, a lot of pros have done it, but they land, they land in Bermuda and pack up their bag and hop on a plane and head right to Newport. They don't hang around for any fun.
So the race starts on Friday, June 3rd. We hope that you make it to Bermuda by June 11th, which is the following Saturday for the party. That's more than 7 days. Most people make it in somewhere between 4 to 6 days. That's
we were 6 hours.
Unless you're on the slow boat to hell.
We were 6 days, I think 10 hours.
Oh, okay. What boat were you on?
We were on Obtuse, which is a Sabre 425.
Yeah, okay, I remember that boat.
Yeah, the race starts on Friday, and we expect most of the boats to arrive like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And there is actually a finish limit, so you have to finish the race by noon on Saturday the 11th. That's when the race ends. So.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to give us another audience question there?
Sure. And I think this is a good one. Jayne. Hey,
Hi, Jayne. Is there a cruise sign up for the return trip? I'd love to race, but haven't found a boat. Would love to get experience in a return sail. And I saw in a subsequent conversation that she's already getting messaged by a skipper. So, Jayne, watch what you wish for, sister. But let's see.
Jayne, if nothing works out, email me and we can hook you up.
Yeah. We do not have a cruise sign up for the return. Our race technically ends on Saturday the 11th at noon. In fact, when you get to Bermuda, you go and check in with customs, and one of the things we do is ask you to turn in the yellow brick tracker at that point. We used to let you keep the tracker all the way back to Annapolis, and we stopped that a few years ago because it's liability wise, we need to take those trackers back, and the race is over on the 11th. But that said, we do try to make as many matches as we can. I'm doing a return trip on a boat. I know that there are lots of boats looking for people for that return. I would even say come down to Bermuda anyway, because things happen. You never know. You think that you're a skipper and you race down there and you think everything's going to be fine and your crew is going to be on the return, and then by the time they get there and they have fun in Bermuda, they're like, oh, we're going to go home now. And you're like, I need crew. And there's always a boat looking for crew. Always. Every year, the boat is like, would love to pick up an extra 1 or 2 people. So if you
I was just going to say that's an excellent point, because we had 8 to get there, but we only had 4 for the return. And 4 for that trip is a little sketchy, especially because, someone can go down with seasickness or something, and then you're down to 3, and then it's quite a haul at that point. So yeah, absolutely.
In 2018, we did it on a Swan 44. We had 9 people going. We had 3 on the return. The 3 on the return couldn't figure out how we did it 9 going out, but they were actually quite happy with just 3 of them. But the one thing I will add is getting in and out of Bermuda can be tricky, because they want to make sure that you have a way out. They don't want you ending up in Bermuda and staying there.
That is true.
So if you fly into Bermuda, you have to show that you either have a return ticket or a letter from the skipper saying, hey, you're on my boat and this is how you're leaving. So kind of coming, unless you have a refundable ticket and are willing to walk the docks, it might be a little tricky. But again, a lot of skippers are trying to get their crews and all that set before they go. So there should be plenty of opportunities. And I suspect we will have another happy hour or two before the race,
We have
where you
another
might be
happy
able to meet.
Yeah, our website has all of our events on it.
What is your
BermudaOceanRace.com.
web address?
So,
What is your web address?
BermudaOceanRace.com.
Yep, BermudaOceanRace.com. You go, just type that in your browser, it'll take you right there. All of our events that are coming up are listed, and you just RSVP it to the email that's listed there, and she'll put you, our events chair will put you on the list, so that.
Good. We have them on the
It's
SpinSheet
also helpful
calendar
if you.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. Yes, you do. Oh, there it is. Oh, look.
Yeah.
Wow.
We also have a fairly active Facebook page too, and you can follow a lot of our stuff on Facebook.
Great. We have more audience questions. Let's keep ripping through them.
Bring them
Charlotte,
on.
you can
right.
cherry pick.
Okay.
For anyone who's just tuning in, we're talking to the folks from the Annapolis Bermuda Ocean Race. SpinSheet has been a longtime sponsor of this race, and
we love SpinSheet.
To do that. Yeah. Well, we love your race. So, and Ron, is celestial navigation considered as a backup for electronics failure? I'm going to let the safety officer answer that one. What do you think, Don?
Sure, I'd be happy to. It's certainly an option. We don't require that boats have celestial navigation or qualified crew that can do it. We do have a division within the race so that if you've got folks that want to do celestial navigation, you're allowed to do that. And there are restrictions about using GPS for your offshore use until you get very close to Bermuda, and we look and will monitor and grade all of the celestial navigation fixes that you've done, and we'll determine who we feel is the best boat to do celestial that did the best job at using celestial navigation to get themselves all the way to Bermuda. But it's not a requirement, and I would say it's a minority of boats that will enter the celestial navigation division. I know personally on Himmel, we don't enter that division, but we still do it because it's great practice. We'll bring a sextant. There's a number of apps that you can get for either your iPad or your Android or whatever else that simplify the calculations to go ahead and use celestial as an accurate means. And we did it on our transatlantic and found it. It's very rewarding. It really is. It's very rewarding to know that something that has been used for hundreds of years still works. And you don't need those GPS satellites to get yourself around the world. But it's certainly not a requirement.
Yeah. Well, I know I took a celestial navigation class one time, and we were doing noon sights across Back Creek. It's just not quite the same.
Yeah.
So Ron Burke has asked a question here. Are tracking apps such as the Yellow Brick Tracker used to follow the boats?
Yes, they are.
Yes.
So all of the entries are issued at the skipper check-in, which will be either the day before or 2 days before the race. Every boat is given a Yellow Brick Tracker, and you use the trackers throughout the race. We also have a safety officer that's communications officer that will be calling the boats every morning to get position, weather, anything that they need to report. There's a whole list of what they have to report. So that's we do keep, not just we give you the tracker so that everybody else can follow you and we can know where you are, but also as a safety precaution. We do communicate with the boats throughout the race.
Great.
Good.
Charlotte Silverman, what are the rules for turning on your engine only to generate power during the race? That's a great question. I have no idea what the answer to that one is. Who'd like to answer her?
I can answer that. As long as you don't put it into forward gear, you're good. And I think it's as simple as that. I believe the rules say, and I can't remember exactly, but as long as there's no, mechanical assistance, something like that, you're good. You certainly do need your engine to generate power and put it back in your batteries if you have that set up. But again, as long as you don't put it in forward, you're good.
All right. Did you know about the Bermuda Shorthanded Return Race? Thank you for the question, Carol.
Oh, hey, Carol. I didn't. What, are you organizing it?
Anyone else familiar with it?
I will say this, we have a lot of skippers who do the race who, when they come back, they do kind of organize their own flotilla. And Don, maybe you can talk to some of this about what happens. You're cruising in company. I have no doubt that some might even race against each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not familiar with the shorthanded race. But Don, you've had, go ahead.
A little bit. I mean, for example, in 2018, we knew that there was about 6 boats that were all going to leave on the following Monday. We're all going same way, same day. And we said, well, shoot, if we all have our individual schedules, it still would be sort of nice to keep track of each other, on our VHF radios. And so we just set up certain times and certain frequencies that we'd attempt to contact each other just to find out how things were going, what was the weather like, does anybody have any issues or whatever else. And it's a little hit or miss, because if they're further than probably 25 or 30 miles away, you're not going to hear them or they're not going to hear you. But it did work. Normally there'd be 1 or 2 boats that would be within range and we'd talk, and they might be able to hopscotch and talk to another boat that we couldn't talk to. And it was informal, but it was more for just safety and socialization purposes. It was not a race per se. I do think the other race, the Newport to Bermuda race, has a formal return race that may be shorthanded, and I don't know the details on that.
Yeah, that's what they. I think. It looks like Carol was mentioning that. Yeah.
Yes, and that I don't know the details on, but that's not part of our A to B race.
No, it's not. And you're going to run into some logistical issues if you try to stay in Bermuda for that period of time, because the other race is a very large race, and you're going to have a hard time finding a place to put your boat unless you want to go out in a mooring. There's not going to be. It's going to be a full island.
We have a couple of lodging questions.
That island's going to be full in June.
Couple lodging questions there.
Yeah, sure.
I'm trying to find it. I saw it and I've now lost it. But people are asking, where do you stay when you get there?
Yeah, are there rooms blocked out in Bermuda? Are you completely on your own for accommodations?
Well, I work with the skippers and crew. I communicate a lot with the skippers about accommodations, and you have a lot of. Of course, there's hotels there. The hotels are pretty expensive, but there's a lot of cottages and little bed and breakfast type of places. We also, of course, use the DVRO and Airbnb and stuff like that. A lot of the boats will get a house. We'll rent out a house so that they can do some provisioning for the return. And it gives their crew, both race and return crew, a place to kind of get together and stay. But yeah, so we do have some information on our website about accommodations and some of the places that we recommend, you check out. We love local stuff. So there are a couple of local, BermudaRentals.com is one of them that I've worked with since 2010. And they are really great about helping you find a place that meets your budget, is big enough, is where on the island where you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know at least one of our guests that I see in the chatterbox tonight. Well, she did some couch surfing, kind of an amazing experience in Bermuda, making new friends. So, yeah, there are lots of ways to go about it. But those are all good reasons to go to one of your happy hours.
Some people like to stay on their boat too. So that's another place to sleep.
I would want to point out, with a crew of 8, we were hot bunking it the entire time, but when we got there, it was in the middle of the night, and so you're in quarantine, and so you got to be on the boat. You can't go to shore. We're waiting on customs, and you have to figure out where does everybody sleep at that point, especially because it was as a tropical storm came right through, and so everybody was basically down below on the floor
on the sails.
But anyhow,
So we're approaching last call. Let's keep the questions coming. Is radar required for this race? That's a good one for Don.
No, it is not. It certainly can help. We don't require radar, nor do we require AIS, which are two of the systems that you use quite often, possibly at night. But they're not requirements for the race. They're encouraged, but not required. Some other races do require it, and some other races have less benign conditions. There's a race from Marblehead to Halifax, Nova Scotia, for example, where you run into a lot of fog and have a lot of rocks along the coastline. That race will require, for example, AIS, but our race does not require either.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask all of you a quick question. I'm going to start with Sharb, and I want you guys to tell me about an amazing moment that you experienced on this race.
I'm the finish. Coming into Bermuda, the Bermuda Coast Guard is very particular about how you come in. They're watching you the entire time on radar, and they know who you are. They're following you, and when you come up to the marker, the spit marker, you have to call it, and at that point, the race is over, and it's an enormous amount of relief. Obviously, you've made it there, but that to me, I was on the bow, kind of looking at where we were to cross the finish line. It was incredible.
Yeah,
I've had some amazing experiences on both ends of the spectrum. The first year we went, we had 20+ foot seas, which I've never seen before or since, and 40+ knots of wind, and it was horrible. And yet in other years, probably one of my best experiences was about 12 hours of about 12 knots with a spinnaker, and the boat is just gliding along with dolphins. At night, you get the dolphins lit up with the bioluminescence diving the boat. It's the most incredible thing you've ever seen.
How about you, Don?
And I'm just thinking, Chris brings up the finish. I remember one time where we knew there was a big thunderstorm coming, and we could see it coming, and we knew that we needed to shorten sail, drop some of the mainsail down. And the winds had already picked up, and we had a crew of 8 on board, and every single person had a specific job that had to be done exactly at the right time and sequence. And we talked it through, multiple times to make sure we got it. And of course, it was in the middle of the night. And we did it. We did it successfully. We got the sail down just before we had, big gusts of wind and everything. And it was exhilarating, all 8 of us. It was just a wonderful team bonding moment, that we've been able to get something done like this. And that's what I remember.
Cool. And last but not least, Corinne, tell us about a beautiful moment you've had on this race.
Oh, so many great races, so many great stories, so many stories. But I remember on one of the races I did, I think it was in 2016, where we had storms behind us, and we were sailing just fast enough to stay ahead of the storm. And the wind on, the front end of that low pressure was awesome. And so we were like the sails were trimmed perfectly, and we were fast, and we just stayed like that. It stayed like that for probably 5 or 6 hours. It was just perfect. We were dialed in, and the watch change happened. Nobody needed to do anything. It was like the boat was, I'm going to Bermuda. This is my mission, and we were just along for the ride. Of course, I've had those experiences where we weren't faster than the storm, and that can be also really exhilarating. Just the feeling of being out in the middle of the ocean, and there's nothing, you see nothing, and it just it makes you feel, I don't know, it just makes you really, it's an experience unlike any other. So that's the color of the Gulf Stream and the dolphins, and then that moment where you're just about really sick of the race and sick of your crew, and you're ready to just like, why did I do this? And then you see Bermuda, and it's like the reward at the end. And you get there, and they meet you with drinks. They meet you with beverages, and it's great. It's a great thing. So. And there's something weird about that race because there's a moment you say, "I'm never doing this again," but then somehow you do it again. Like 2 years later, you find yourself doing it again.
It's a short-term memory. It's an affliction.
It's sort of like a racing amnesia or something, where we forget the bad parts.
Well, there have been so many great questions from the audience, and I can see that they would keep asking questions for the next half hour. But we have a firm stop to the SpinSheet Happy Hour because we want people to keep coming back. So what I'm going to recommend to anyone who's asking you guys questions, go to BermudaOceanRace.com. If you're looking for a spot on a crew, reach out directly to Corinne, who is chair at BermudaOceanRace.com. You can find all of the emails of the people on this call on the website. Go to the happy hours, go to the events, and connect, because this race starts when?
June 3rd.
June 3rd. So there's still time. And when is the deadline for anyone who's really on the fence and they're still considering joining? When is the deadline for entry to this race?
Well, it depends on your budget. So right now we have a raise. There's a one cost until March 1st, and then after March 1st it does go up. I believe that we need to have all of the entry and requirements completed by mid-May. So
May 1st, I think, is the deadline.
Yeah, it's not technically May 1st. We don't technically have a drop dead date for entering the race in our NOR, but
it's more reasonable if you sign up before March.
Yes, so it does. And once you get signed up, then you get access to all of our seminars and all of the support that we're going to give you as an entry. So sooner is better than later.
Good. Well, Corinne, if you don't mind, after we say goodbye, and I don't want you guys to hang up. I want you to hang around for our debrief and party in the green room. But whenever we're completely done, if you wouldn't mind going through and answering any stray questions in this thread from a couple of the people who are on, that would be very helpful. But
sure.
We're a very proud sponsor of your event. Thank you for keeping it going and having all these great events to ride. And cheers, you guys. You're such great guests. I appreciate you being on the SpinSheet Happy Hour. And hopefully you'll come back and tell us how the race went one of these days.
That would be great.
All right, everybody have a great weekend. Be safe out there, and we'll see you next time on the SpinSheet Happy Hour. And Sharb, I guess you have some thanking of sponsors to do. So we'll go.
I'm going to do that. I'm throwing everybody in the green room.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. We really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you do have any further questions, please go to BermudaOceanRace.com. I think they'll be happy to do that. And by the way, if you're interested in trying to get on crews and stuff, you can always go to SpinSheet's Crew Finder. I'm thinking about adding a little button in there that says I want to do the race or I want to do the return. Like, I think that would be kind of cool. Anyway, again, big thank you to Mount Gay for sponsoring this episode, and big thank you to you for tuning in. I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.